All right, we're live. Hey, everybody. My name is Phil Struzula. I'm the founder of Select Software Reviews, a website dedicated to helping companies find and buy the right software. And as many of you know, on a pretty regular basis, I talk to people in our community, in our network, who are doing interesting things in HR, talent acquisition, people operations to learn from them. And, I started doing these conversations like on phone calls and Zooms, and I was like, why aren't we recording these? And so now we do record these and we put them on the internet so anybody can learn from them and watch them. Today, I'm joined by Mitch Zenger. And Mitch, do you mind just sort of giving us a little bit of your background and what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So my name is Mitch. I'm with a company called M Squared Consulting. And so I've been in the world of consulting and sort of talent management for the last 30 plus years. My main focus is really around performance management, and very passionate about the world of HR and HR technology. A lot of our consulting is around operations efficiency, and how that sort of connects with the people and putting together teams and groups of teams to be able to be as effective as possible. So my big push lately has been around teamwork and team development. How do you get the right blend of skills and talent to come in and help solve problems inside of companies?
Yeah, and I know you've got this whole sort of manifesto that we'll link to when we put together the write-up for this thing. Do you mind just starting off with what's your gripe with individual team or individual goals in OKRs?
Yeah. I don't have a gripe with them other than it can be counterproductive to teamwork. When we just fixate on individual performance and individual goals and individual OKRs, it can, depending on the group, it can drive like narcissistic behavior, where it's just everybody clamoring to the top. I don't care about you. It's just me getting my goal and my bonus and whatever. And in a few organizations that are very simple, that's okay. And that works. But most companies are now becoming so complex that, individual performance is almost, it's not what's best for what a company needs to do. It really does need to become more team focused. And we don't measure that typically. We typically, we talk about this team culture, and then all of our systems and tools and, performance management stuff is all individual based.
What's like the prime example of when individual goals go wrong?
Prime example.
Or what's an example? Maybe not like the number one.
Yeah. I think everybody, if you sort of say, tell me a situation where you remember somebody being this narcissist or this, I did something that was good for me, but it was bad for the rest of the company. Everybody has a story to tell. I've watched senior executives basically backstab each other left and right to get their agenda accomplished, but it doesn't really serve the need of the company. But nobody stops it. Nobody changes that. It's, that's the way the incentive structures work.
What's an incentive structure that would promote that sort of behavior?
It's measuring team performance. It's not about what I did. It's about what our team did and how we supported each other. And so we need to measure that and then reward people who say, yeah, I see the behaviors, I see the culture, I recognize each other for supportive activities and actions. And most of the technology that we have right now doesn't do that.
And what's an example of like these individual incentives that can go awry and drive people to do the wrong thing?
So you see an individual incentive around, a sales target or a product launch. And so you have like a engineer or an engineering team who will launch a product that isn't ready to go to market. It's not, it hasn't worked through all the bugs. It's not really meeting the needs of a customer, but because their goal is get it launched by a day, they launch it. And then it goes to market and the support team is dying trying to support all the bugs and problems. And, there's huge repair costs, RMA costs, whatever on the supply chain side, because, we now have to replace components or something like that because it wasn't ready. And so if there was better teamwork on a product launch to say, everything's ready, all systems go, we've got the support, set up to do it, you're going to have a much better launch and a more successful, a happier customer long term.
So it sounds like, if you go to the head of product and say, hey, we're going to give you $100,000 bonus if this new product launches by, November 10th or something like that creates a perverse incentive because I'll launch the product, but it could suck, right? And then sales is upset and customer success is upset. And probably most of the product work is upset. What's like the sort of team, like what are some examples of like team aligned incentives that promote better behavior?
I guess the primary one that I think we don't really often measure would be how, right now everything's driven by what I do. And we never look to measure how I help you be successful. So there's no rating system on, I did a really good job coaching you or giving feedback and advice or teaching you this and helping you understand so that we all as a team work better together. And so if we have those kinds of metrics, you then can measure that and incent that and reward that and, give people, compensation for the behavior you actually want inside of your company, rather than we just launched a product, but it really wasn't ready.
And I guess like when I hear that, I'm sort of like, how do you collect that information and sort of understand who's actually being a really good mentor, coach, team player?
It's a different way of collecting it. I mean, I think right now, there's all the pulse. There's the pulse tools, the surveys and metrics and all of that that's out there. We don't ask questions around how well you support each other and how well we help each other, and I think we can. And I think some would argue, well, everybody's just going to give everybody tens because they know it leads to the best bonus. I would disagree with that. I think people are honest and they are, you can even track metrics on, trying to identify people who just, give the high five or the high 10 or whatever perfect scores to everybody out there, because then it's not really working.
Yeah. There's no signal. It's just everybody's a 10. And how do you recommend, like when you're working with companies now, like, and you go in, you're like, hey, like this incentive is screwed up. This incentive is screwed up. Like, how do you recommend they create their new incentive frameworks?
It's kind of needs to cascade. So it's what's the culture you're trying to create? What do you want that to look like and feel like? How do you measure that? And then, put in the question set and everything else to measure differently and ask a different set of questions around teams and team development. Most people, it's like they talk about this culture of teams and collaboration. We work well together and this big, kumbaya, we're all great together. But when you look at their performance management systems and the way they're compensated and everything else, there's almost nothing usually in there that talks about collaboration, working well, how much did you help other people, Who did you teach? That's not there.
I read this pretty interesting book a year or two ago called The Man Who Beat the Markets. It's about
Mm-hmm.
Jim Simons, who ran or runs a hedge fund, I guess, called Renaissance Technologies, which he was a code breaker. And then he was kind of one of the first guys to figure out, like, oh, we can use computers and data to trade stocks.
Yeah.
And it's been one of the most successful hedge funds, arguably the most successful ever. And what's sort of interesting is that if you look at most hedge fund compensation, you look at a trader, it's like, hey, you generated $5 million a year, therefore your bonus is 500,000.
Yep.
For his fund, what he did was he said, it doesn't matter if you generated 5 million and this person generated 10 million, everybody gets the same bonus. And you get it based on tenure and how senior you are and, some sort of other factors, but everybody's compensated based on this one number, which is how much money did we make as a firm this year. And the reason he did it is because he wanted to foster collaboration. He didn't want this trader to be stealing this person's ideas or whatever. What do you think about sort of an organization that focuses on like one metric, like, profitability, right? Like how much profit did we generate this year, which is sort of like the culmination of many, many different factors, including teamwork and collaboration and coaching and all this other stuff. Is that the right way to go about this? In maybe a simplified way?
It's a simplified way. I think in many circumstances, yes, that's the direction I would push. It's not always the perfect solution. If there are certain roles and jobs that are completely disconnected from, the profitability of the overall company, that, if I don't feel that connection to how I align to that goal, it can be a challenge. But with that said, I would say 90+% of the time, larger, bigger, sort of this, when you talk about OKR, these cascading goals where it all sort of rolls up, and I know how this ultimately leads to the profitability of our company. That's what you want. It's and it more than anything, it does away with the crappy behavior and the like you said, that kind of backstabbing behavior between traders or anybody else that always goes on inside of companies, because they think their natural tendency is, I as an employee am competing against my coworkers to be the top 5%, and so I'm going to get the biggest raise and all that kind of stuff, and that's completely the wrong message you want to be sending.
Yeah, I guess this profitability thing, it's sort of like the power of stock options. And I guess you make another good point, which is you got to kind of see the relationship between what you're doing and profitability, right? And so stock options work typically with startups, and then they typically work with senior executives at more stable companies. And if you're working at GE and you're you're making 100 grand a year as like sort of a mid-level manager or something like that, like you're probably not going to get any stock options, right? But if you're an SVP or VP, like that's going to be the majority of your compensation.
Yep.
Which, yeah, is sort of interesting. The direct path is really important, I think.
Yep.
So how do you think like HR teams need to evolve their thinking? I know we sort of scratched the surface here, but is it as simple as just saying, hey, scrap the individual OKRs and look at things on a team basis?
So if the way we need to change our thinking is, it's not us, it's not like HR or leaders trying to make each individual successful, which I kind of I think a way to think of it is, it's like this parent-child relationship. I'm the leader. I'm supposed to incent you and give you the candy out there in front of you to be your best. And you need to change it to, how do I get our employees to help each other be their best? And it's more of the, everybody, treat everybody as an adult. It's adult-to-adult relationships in an organization. And all of your incentives, recognition, learning should be amongst the individuals supporting and helping each other. And that seems basic, but if you really think about how most of your HR tech stack is set up and compensation structures are set up, it's all, top down driven,
Yeah.
and it's all sort of directed by somebody else, and it then breeds this parent-child relationship that it doesn't support teams and people helping each other in this journey in their career.
Do you think that there are some good examples of companies that understand this and have set up their organizations around these principles?
Um, I have seen a few. Yeah, there's a few companies that they've had an amazing leader who kind of gets this team collaboration, the holacracy or whatever. We don't want leaders, we're all in a team working together. Zappos and some others like that, they're rare, very very rare, and you don't see it widespread. So I know companies are trying to do it, but it's this, I just see it as mixed messages. Yeah, there's teams, but yeah, there's individuals. They don't really align, but we don't stop the individual side to drive more teamwork.
Yeah. It's sort of interesting. When I went to business school, I went to HBS, and I think that this school historically had a reputation of being a very cutthroat place where, people were fighting for the same jobs, and therefore they were fighting for the grades to get those jobs, et cetera. And they've really, I don't know when this transformation happened. My guess is a few decades ago. They've really focused on how can the rising tide lift all ships. So there basically aren't grades anymore. Like you either get a 1, 2, or a 3, and like what the heck does that even mean? So everything's focused around collaboration and a very strong sense of culture, sense of oneness, I would say, and I think that really does lift all ships. Like it makes it a much more enjoyable experience, but it also makes it so that you worked in venture capital and your buddy or somebody you don't even know is like, hey Phil, like I want to work in VC. Can you show me how to do that? I'm like, yeah, sure, why not, right? Because I know somebody else is going to help me, figure something else out, and then it just becomes this like self-perpetuating norm. And I wonder if that happens in cultures where there's like a very strong like. It almost reminds me of like WeWork before the crash of like
Yeah.
you got this like cult like leader, everybody believes in the mission, everybody's like super jazzed up, they're partying together. And I wonder if it sort of like walks this like fine line of like cult versus really high performing organization.
That's, yeah, interesting. I like the analogy of the school, because I think that's exactly what you're trying to drive inside of an organization. I mean, I think it was a dominant leader who almost, I mean, it was collaborative, but it was somewhat dictatorial in a way.
Yeah.
And he just was a strong personality who pushed through where he was going. Yeah, I don't see a lot of companies on a wide basis doing that and sort of doing the collaboration of, there is, like your business school example. I mean, you just don't see companies doing that enough.
Yeah, it's really challenging because it is, to some extent, it's a zero sum game. Like you want the promotion,
Yep.
only one person is going to get the promotion. But in another part, you can expand the pie by working collaboratively and making the company bigger, and therefore there might be two opportunities to be promoted. It sort of reminds me, this is like a super tangent, but like the book Sapiens, where like, like humans, like we sort of like fought against each other for a really long time in like small groups.
Yeah.
And then like it's like why did civilization happen? Because we have like shared beliefs about like religion or whatever, and that allowed us to work together to create other shared beliefs like laws and agreements, and that allowed us to build cities and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that's a tangent
Yeah.
for another day.
Absolutely. But
I
I agree.
mentioned earlier your sort of like manifesto that you have
Yeah.
on your LinkedIn. Do you mind walking us through your hierarchy of needs for teams?
Absolutely. So I think everybody at some point in there, most people have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Kind of for individuals, you have this need to kind of step through physiological needs and the safety and the food, shelter, all of that kind of stuff, and then you move to this idea of belonging, and the ultimate pinnacle of an individual is self actualization. I'm becoming my best self. And so I tried to sort of rewrite that concept in the idea of teams, which is similar. Kind of, you need the basic foundations to then grow and build upon to drive what I would call sort of team actualization, but it's different. So I kind of built it in 7 steps. This idea of compensation, that's kind of your foundation. There needs to be compensation around teams. We pay not just individual behavior, but we pay for teamwork and team behavior. Then on top of that, you need team safety. And that is part of like your pulse survey and your measurement. People need to feel safe. They need to feel like, they can try new things, innovate, suggest different things, and their teammates have their back. Then we have team collaboration. This is the idea that we drive people working together, and there's incentives and motivation and the tools to support, help, coach, etc. with each other. Then we go to this team knowledge, which is um, building a learning process where we're learning together. So you've seen some tools around like cohort learning, and we learn together and we teach each other. And it's not, I think in so many meetings, you pretend like you know everything when you really don't. And it shouldn't be that way. People should say, purpose of working together is you take the knowledge that each of us collectively has and, create a better, bigger, solution as a group. So that's the learning together side. Then there's this idea of team connection. This is, I am supporting you, you're supporting me, this, trusting. We talk about a lot of programs around belonging, but how do you build that and put that into your structure and into the tools that you have? And then once you've sort of built all those foundational principles, then you can do recognition programs where it's teams recognizing each other and knowing that what I give to you, you're going to give to me. How I recognize you, you're going to recognize back to me. And then you really would achieve the ultimate pinnacle, which is team actualization, which is I'm not focused on my benefit. I'm focused on helping you be successful or helping your team be successful. And collaboratively, we all work together for the what's best for the company. So that's kind of the hierarchy. And a lot of companies, they do one piece of that. And they do a recognition program or a learning program, or they drive, one component. But if you don't have the foundation underneath it, they fail. And so they, then have to start back, that didn't work. Let's try a different tool or a different software. When in reality, they're not really building the components, in a unified way, thinking through all that. So that's the model. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, it does. And what would you say to somebody who's like, that's not how people work.
Yeah.
Like, this is why like capitalism works and communism doesn't work, right? Because like people are self-interested, um, and like that's just human nature.
I would say that when we started the industrial era of just like production lines and automation, you're right. That's different. That really is it. You can measure individual performance and output and productivity. In today's world, 90% of companies are of the level of complexity where they're building really complicated solutions and offers and subscription services that it's not about individual performance. And so it has to be about people working and interacting together. Josh Burson, some of his research on, from LinkedIn, the number one searches on LinkedIn is not around specific technologies, but it's around people skills and collaboration skills and communication skills and all the soft skills that really drive teams and interactions between teams. Mm-hmm. And that's where we're going. We can try to deny it and hold off as long as we can, but it's where we are going, I think, as we kind of look at the future of work and where we're headed.
You mentioned tools a bit in the explanation. Like, what are some of the tools that HR teams should be looking at?
Yeah, I mean, so you're looking for tools that support teams. So whatever that is. So if it's a OKR, goal setting tool, make sure that it's not just driven by individual measurements, but you can also have or include, team-based goals and team-based OKRs for folks. There definitely are several out there that are doing it. Not real well, but they're doing it. When you talk about learning programs, I know of companies like Campfire and others that are doing like this cohort-based learning, where we get together in a small group, similar people, and we learn together. Like we learn a topic around leadership, or we learn a topic around, whatever it may be, and it's a group experiential learning process. Or if you're looking at like recognition tools, it needs to be not just a leader compensating the group below them, but it's, we give everybody money, like a Motivosity, I think, is one that I'm familiar with. Give everybody money and let them share with each other based on who they see being, helpful, contributing. You kind of put those factors of what you're trying to encourage, mm-hmm. and let them give that to each other. Those are the tools that drive teamwork. And that's the kind of thing I think you want to be looking for.
I guess my last question is just like, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, wow, this makes a lot of sense, really resonates with me. Like, how might they get started? Is there like an audit to do of your current systems or incentive systems, or like what's like the first step here?
I think there's a few steps you need to do. Obviously, look at what your current tech stack is and what is it doing, and really ask tough questions around what kind of behavior does it drive. I think it's looking at what we need to get rid of. So I think a lot of people try to keep everything you currently have, and we're just going to add this team layer on top. Mm. And I kind of would make the bold statement, you need to stop doing the individual focus so that you can enable this team focus. And that's, a leap of faith, so to speak. But if you don't, you're sending mixed signals to your employees. So it's, deciding what you're going to get rid of so that you can then put these new layers and new tools and new technology out there. I would also say, HR groups and people need to be asking for more of these team-focused tools. I think a lot of the vendors are not creating team-focused solutions because nobody's, if the market and the requests are not there, nobody's going to be building it. So I think we need to be, the demand needs to come for the vendors to start, putting more of these solutions out in the market. There's some, but I would say they're disconnected, and we need to get the tools and the systems and the data architecture and hierarchies, connected together so they all work together.
Mitch, where can people find you online?
Very easily. So Mitch Zenger, you can find me on LinkedIn, connect with me there. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. You can kind of find me anywhere. So look up Mitch Zenger. Not too many of us out there with that last name. And looking forward to connecting and collaborating with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for listening.
Thanks, Phil.